Sarvadharmastha bhagastun sarvadharmaswarupakah Acharyanam Mahacharya Ramakrishna te namaha. The topic before me is what is Vedanta? Now, we all know that Swami Vivekananda used to emphasize again and again during his lectures and talks and writings that he preached and taught only the message of the Upanishads. He has stressed this point again and again. The central theme, the topic of discussion in the Upanishads is Vedanta. Upanishads constitute the final philosophical and metaphysical conclusions of Vedic literature. As you know, Vedas are four in number: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda and Atharva Veda. Each of these Vedas has four different classifications. The earliest one contains all sorts of hymns and songs in praise of different deities, mostly a kind of polytheistic exposition of the ultimate reality. It's called Samhitas. The Brahmanas contain descriptions of rituals, different methods to be employed while performing Vedic rituals. Aranyakas are meant for those who leave their homes when they get aged and go to the forests to live the life of complete concentration and contemplation and meditation. Upanishads constitute the final, the philosophical, spiritual and metaphysical conclusions of Vedic literature. Upanishads speak about some of the ultimate, universal, spiritual truths which are relevant for all times, all people, all ages. Eternal spiritual truths which Swami Vivekananda brought to the United States in 1893. You'll be surprised at the impact that Swamiji made in this country. Have you ever thought about it? The mystery behind Swami Vivekananda's impact on world religious thoughts. When Swamiji came to this country, Europe and America were facing a very serious problem, great challenges. The statements and conclusions of organized religions were facing a terrible challenge, existential threat, so to speak. Before Vivekananda was born, Marx and Engels had already published evolutionary theories had already become prominent. Positivism had already become very prominent and had become important topics for discussion in the drawing rooms of Europe and America. And all these three movements together were challenging the claims of organized religions. Do we need a religion? Do we need a God? There have been more bloodsheds and battles and much more bloody wars in the name of God and on behalf of religion than perhaps agnosticism and atheism. So people, intelligent, educated people were looking for a religion that teaches us to look upon the whole humanity as one spiritual fraternity. Religion as we understand today, or at least as it used to be understood during the Middle Ages, was something very divisive. Inquisitions, genocides, massacres, and so many social injustices. All these were common in the name of religion. So people were looking for a religion that was not afraid of science and technology and reasoning. A religion which won't be shaken, which won't be challenged by Darwin's followers or by the radical humanists, the followers of Marx and Engels and Hegelians. And Swamiji brought a religion which can stand its ground against the onslaughts of science, technology, reason, Darwin's evolutionary theories, the challenges of neo-positivists who used to argue that religion which cannot be proved in the laboratory of science has no right to exist. Swami Vivekananda brought a kind of universal spiritual humanism, which did not insist that a God sits above the clouds after creating this world, dividing mankind into believers and non-believers, threatening non-believers with hellfire and promising heaven to believers. As if God's existence is so completely dependent upon our recognition of His existence. What a miserable God such a God should be, who is dependent upon our recognition of His existence. That's why Swamiji's a very famous statement which Swamiji made, caught the imagination of Max Muller, who quoted this in one of his articles. The Swamiji statement was this: if you do not believe in God, live your life in such a way that God will accept you even if you do not accept Him. That was a kind of universal spiritual humanism. This view was essentially based on Vedanta. And Vedanta teaches that the ultimate reality, the supreme reality, is one omnipresent, immanent, attributeless, transcendental reality that lives within all of us. So the absolute reality, God, lives not outside of us, but within all of us. Gita, there is a statement, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridesi arjuna tishtadi brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudhanimaya. So this statement, Gita says, God lives within all of us. And He operates this huge machine of cosmic existence, living within all of us. It's an immanent reality. And this God opens His doors and windows not only to those who believe in Him, even to those who do not believe in Him. So in Swami Vivekananda's Vedantic scheme, even non-believers, Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins will have a place. They will not be able to challenge Swami Vivekananda's interpretation of religion Vedanta, because he said Vedanta believes in one supreme reality that dwells in all of us, not only human beings, in the entire creation. So unity of existence, oneness of existence, and the inherent divinity of every living being, and a kind of universal spiritual ethical philosophy based on the unity of mankind. These are some of the cornerstones of Swami Vivekananda's interpretation of Vedanta. I shall just give you a bird view of the evolution of this Vedantic thought right from early times. As I said earlier, Vivekananda repeated again and again that he taught, he preached, he wrote only about the Upanishads. Upanishads contain all kinds of statements. In fact, Upanishads are the first and the most important source of Vedantic tradition, Vedanta philosophy. Upanishads must have taken their present form around 4000 BC, going by the conservative estimates. After the period of Upanishads, a number of other literary classical works also were written during different periods, say between 3000 BC and around 1000 BC. Ashtavakra Samhita, Yoga Vasishtha, Adhyaya Ramayana. These are some of the classical works which really do not constitute part of the Vedic literature, but which also expound the Vedanta philosophy. And one of the most important contributions took place around 2000 BC, when a great sage called Badarayana wrote a very famous book which is called Badarayana Sutras, 554 sutras, which speak about one ultimate reality, transcendental, immanent, an omnipresent, all-pervading reality which lives in all of us. I must make a statement at this stage. Now, Upanishadic concept of the absolute reality is a all-conclusive approach. Upanishads do not say, or Vedanta doesn't say, that other views are wrong. If you look at the evolution of the theories of Godhead, you find at the most primitive stage we had the totemism and ancestor worship and so on. But there are 5 levels of evolution which are pointed out by scholars. These 5 levels were later explained by Max Muller in his introduction to his edition of Rigveda Samhita. The first stage is pantheism, which equates God with nature. External phenomena, this empirical world itself is equated with God, according to the views of pantheism. Then there is another view called polytheism. Polytheism implies that behind every universal phenomena there is a divine spirit. More or less, the modern Shinto religion of Japan is considered to be a later development of this polytheistic concept of Godhead in the Vedic literature. And the third stage is called monotheism, which is very common, which can be called popular Hindu religion, and which is also equated with the Abrahamic religious tradition, where you believe God as one who creates this world, who sustains and protects this world, and who decides the destiny of living beings inhabiting his creation, who supervises and controls, promises, and directs life on this planet. Kind of monotheistic concept of Godhead. The fifth stage is supposed to be henotheism, where in certain traditions, when you pray to one God, that God is sometimes praised as the one supreme reality. But when you pray to another God, that deity will be considered to be supreme. I'm here, please remember, I'm just trying to give a very short and quick overview of the evolution of absolute reality according to modern Indologists. These ideas were later developed by Winternitz and later Max Muller, and Paul Deussen explained it further in his translation of 60 Upanishads from Sanskrit into English, into German first, then into English by other scholars. And the fifth stage is called monism. In monism, they believe in the unity of Godhead. Now, Vedanta is not really monism. That's a point which I want to stress. Very often in English translations, we find Vedanta, especially non-dualistic Vedanta, non-dualism, is equated with monism. Really, it is not monism, because monism implies unity. The very idea of unity also implies the possibility of diversity. So monism really means non-dualism. Advaita Vedanta means non-dualism, not monism. That's what I want to point out, because monism implies a possibility of diversity, because monism, it also directly it means unity. Therefore, Shankaracharya called his system as non-dualism. What Vivekananda brought to Western world was this non-dualistic version of Vedanta philosophy. Vedanta philosophy, broadly speaking, has 7 schools, of which 3 are very prominent. I shall come to that later. So what Swami Vivekananda brought to Western world was the non-dualistic system of philosophy, which was developed into a compact, intricate philosophical and metaphysical system by Shankaracharya, who lived between 778 AD and 810. That means around 32 years. He lived only for 32 years. It was Shankaracharya who later developed this non-dualistic philosophy into a single, compact, intricate, complete philosophical and spiritual system. It was this version of Vedanta Vivekananda brought to this country. Some modern scholars have speculated as to why Swami Vivekananda preached non-dualism in America and Europe. In India, when Swamiji was traveling in India, Swamiji in some places gave equal importance to the monotheistic version of Vedanta of Ramanuja and the dualistic system of Vedanta of Madhvacharya. Monotheistic means kind of qualified, non-dualistic, Visishta Advaita of Ramanuja, and Dvaita or dualistic system of Madhva. Swami Vivekananda gave importance to these two systems as well. But since I am talking in this part of the world, I should say why Swamiji insisted that he wanted to teach non-dualism or Advaita in Western world. There is a historical reason. Suppose Swamiji had preached Ramanuja Visishta Advaita here, anybody would have said, we have our own Christianity, we have our own Saint Francis of Assisi, and if Swamiji had preached dualism, Madhvacharya here, perhaps that would have created some problems, because Madhvacharya says there are some people who have permanent residence in hell. They can never be redeemed. So, neither the qualified non-dualism of Ramanuja or the Dvaita or dualistic philosophy of Madhvacharya would have made any sense, historically speaking, in Western world. What the Western world was looking for was a religion which taught you that the entire humanity is one spiritual family. Unity of existence. That was the central theme of Vivekananda's interpretation of Vedanta. His concept of universal religion was also equally important. I shall just give a side view of how this Advaita, non-dualism of Shankaracharya, which Swami Vivekananda reinterpreted in modern times in the language of science and technology and reason and Western cultural values, how this created a great impact. Today, we participate in interreligious dialogues, interfaith dialogues. This dialogical approach is itself a creation of Vedanta. Because there are three main approaches in interfaith relationship. One was the old view, exclusivism, or the fanatical approach, which taught that my religion is right, yours is wrong. So all of you come to my religion, which nobody would dare to teach to any enlightened audience in today's world. Nobody would do that. Nobody would listen to that. The second approach was a kind of eclecticism, where you borrow things from all religions, kind of eclectic approach. You borrow, you put together different religious ideas from all existing faith systems. That also is not very rational or scientific. But Swami Vivekananda said that every religion in its essential, in its original form, contains certain universal spiritual truths. We must emphasize those aspects. Every religion, in the teachings of every prophet, every great religious scripture contains certain universal, eternal spiritual truths. They also contain some secondary details. For example, Christianity, or the Bible contains the pastoral setting, the cultural, the folklore aspects, the socio-cultural, socio-anthropological aspects of Palestine and Judah. Hindu religious scriptures may contain many of the socio-anthropological aspects of India. Quran may contain many of the socio-anthropological aspects of Arabia. Like that, or maybe the Talmud and Torah, they all contain different socio-anthropological, cultural, linguistic aspects of the particular place in which that prophet or teacher was born and worked. Swamiji said, we must set aside the secondary details and we must look for the essential, the fundamental, universal spiritual truths contained in all religious traditions, which he called universal religion. This universal religion is nothing but a modern humanistic interpretation of Vedanta. Vedanta, non-dualistic school. Because non-dualism tells you that God lives in all of us. If you can think of a triangle, on the top there is God, on left side world, and the right side living beings. Now, non-dualism tells you that God in reality lives in the universe and also in all living beings. Dualism will tell you that there are 5 differences. God is different from the world, God is different from all living beings, and the world is different from all living beings. Everything in this universe is different from each other, and every living being is different from every other living being. It is based on dualism, differences. It is called dualistic approach of Madhvacharya. If Vivekananda had brought this teaching here, the people would not have accepted. So what the modern world in 19th century was looking for was a kind of universal religion, a religion based on the principle of unity and oneness and divinity of existence and of all living beings. So Swamiji brought this here. Now, there are 3 fundamental books which constitute the foundation of this Vedanta philosophy. The most important, as I said earlier, was the Upanishads themselves. The second is Bhagavad-Gita, which we chant. Gita, if you read the Gita, you find the central thrust of theme of this scripture is the unity and the oneness of existence and divinity of all living beings. We don't hurt our neighbor, do harm to our neighbor, not because God will punish us, but because our neighbor and ourselves belong to the same spiritual family. This is the central thrust of non-dualistic philosophy. And then the third book is Brahma Sutras, which are small, pithy statements, brief statements, which are altogether 554 in number, which are interpreted by different philosophers, different schools of Vedanta philosophy. Now, the central thrust, so to say, the slogan of Vedanta is this: Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmeva Navara. You must be familiar with. The meaning is this: there is only one absolute reality. Absolute reality, that should be understood, not reality, but absolute reality. Before going further, I must explain these levels of conceptual reality in Vedanta philosophy. Vedanta says there can be only one absolute reality, not 2. And to be considered to be absolutely real, there are 3 conditions to be taken into consideration. If there is something which remains the same in the past, in the present and future, with Trigala Atida, etc., means which transcends the limitation of time, space and causation. Is there anything in this world which doesn't change according to time? Even the universe that we are living in may be 13 billion years old. Before 13 billion years, before Big Bang, it did not exist. And maybe after several billions of years, it will not exist. So the universe itself is momentary. It's not absolute. Anything which comes into existence sometime in the past, it may be billions or trillions of years back, or may vanish, disappear after several trillions of years. It is only relative. It cannot be absolutely real. So anything that belongs to time, limited by the framework of time, space and causation, relativity, cannot be absolute. It is only relative. That's why Vedanta says Jagat Mithya. You may have heard this word Maya and Mithya. There's a terrible misunderstanding that sometimes the word Maya and Mithya is wrongly translated as illusion. Vivekananda, in one of his talks in London, delivered London, he was the first great Indian thinker who corrected this wrong translation of the word Maya and Mithya as illusion. Because in English language, illusion could mean you see something where nothing exists. Pure, a non-existent entity that you imagine you see in front of you. This is illusion. The world is not illusion. Vedanta doesn't say that this world is illusion. Vedanta says this world is only relative. And all of us will agree. Our body is relative. We may live for 100 years. The universe may live for 20 billions of years. Both are equally relative. An insect may live for a few minutes. So an insect, this universe, and all of us are equally within the realm of relativity. This is the true meaning of Jagat Mithya. World is illusion. It is absolutely scientific. Because the universe belongs to time, we belong to time, the insect also belongs to time. It doesn't mean non-existence. That is also emphasized. It doesn't mean non-existence. Because anything which is absolutely non-existent, we cannot even conceive of. We can never even intellectually conceive of or think about anything which cannot even exist as an idea, which cannot even be conceptualized. So we can only think of something which comes within our experience of relative world, which we may mistake to be absolutely real because we have not realized the truth. So Vedanta says this world is mithya. The word mithya should be translated and understood as relative or relativity. That's the true meaning. Now what about absolute reality? Vedanta says Brahman is only absolute reality. As I said, there was never a time when Brahman did not exist. Because Brahman was never born. And there will never be a time when Brahman will not exist. Now, you should understand this. This can be said about certain things which are absolutely non-existent. But do we ever speak about anything which is absolutely non-existent? Well, if somebody tells you about anything which doesn't exist even as an idea, you may put him in an institution. To give an example, see, we only refer to certain things which we may be familiar with as an idea. The classical illustration is Raju Sapabhranti, means rope and snake. You may have seen. It's a very famous illustration. So it has been going on for the last 2000 years. It was Nagarjuna who first used this in Madhyamika Karika. Nagarjuna lived in 2nd century AD. So the old rope never breaks and old snake never dies. So this imagery still continues in modern time. Vivekananda also used the same term. Suppose there is not enough light in this room. The windows and doors are closed, not enough light. You see an object lying in front of you. It appears to be a snake. It is really a piece of rope. Now when you open the windows, when you bring light, suddenly you realize immediately that it is a piece of rope. Now, before you switched on the light, before you opened the window, you went in search of a stick, thinking that it is a snake. You may have broken your neck. God forbid, never happens. But then, all these things happen under the wrong notion that it is a snake. So, can we say the snake never exists? The snake exists not in this room, but in the zoo or in the forest. You have seen the snake, maybe not here, because it's a piece of rope only, but you have seen the snake, you have observed its shape, its color, everything, and then when you saw the rope in front of you, you superimposed the snake idea on the piece of rope that you did not recognize because there was not enough light. Now we won't mistake the rope for the snake if the snake idea was totally non-existent. It is not non-existent, but there is a possibility of its existence, if not here, in the zoo which you have also seen. Similarly, we mistake this world of names and forms as something absolutely real. But when we look at this very world, without using the prism of names and forms and causation, you can see only Brahman. You may have seen the picture of Ramana Maharshi. His eyes are opened. You have seen Sri Ramakrishna's picture. His eyes are half closed. They are living in this world as any of us, breathing, but they are not seeing this world. They are seeing this world as Brahman. They are looking at the same object. They are seeing the rope. There is no snake idea. When we look at the same world in association with name and form, we mistake this world to be real. To give you another example, most of you are wearing golden necklaces, golden ornaments. But a goldsmith may not see this ornament. A goldsmith will see only gold. He may be thinking of what kind of gold you have used, what kind of gold is used for manufacturing this necklace. He may be judging your ornament on the basis of the quality of gold. He won't be seeing the name and form. So if you go to a shop for selling old golden ornaments, the goldsmith will judge the quality, the value of your ornaments on the basis of the quality of gold. Because gold is only reality. What about the form? The form was the creation of the goldsmith. He knows that better than any of us. And when you prepare an ornament from the same gold, you give it a name because it has a different form. Similarly, when we look at this universe in association with name and form, we mistake this world to be real. Therefore, Vedanta says, don't think this world is real in the absolute sense. This world is real only in the relative sense. That's the meaning. It is not absolutely non-existent, but it is not absolutely existent either. It is only relative. Anything to be called absolutely real should be the same in the past, in the present, and future. It should not be born, therefore it will not die. And again, another illustration that Vedanta gives is, it should be beyond the 6 changes. 6 Shadvikara Atida, in Sanskrit we call Jayade, Asti, Vardhade, Viparinamade, Kshiyade, Nasyadi, Abhakshiyade, Nasyadi, we call it. Something that is born. Then it exists, it grows, it evolves, it decays, it dies and disappears. These are the 6 changes which are unavoidable, which are found in everything in this empirical world. You cannot see anything in this world which is not subjected to any of these changes. Something is born, it's a change. It is a transition from a state of non-existence to a state of existence. And then it exists, it grows, it evolves, it decays and dies, only to be reborn again. So Vedanta says the entire empirical universe is subjected to these 6 changes. And anything which is subject to changes cannot be real. Trishu kaleshu yet na vibhijarati tadeva satya. This is Shankaracharya's statement. Anything which changes in time is only relative, cannot be absolutely real. Brahman is only reality. Brahman is only reality that qualifies for the status of absolute reality. And think of our own experience. In waking state, we see different objects. When we use our senses of perception like eyes, ears, etc., and mind, we see things, we hear things. When mind and eyes come together, you see an object in front of you. Similarly, the 5 senses. In dreams also you see. In dreams you imagine you're walking in the city of St. Louis, under the blazing sun, you are sleeping in a dark room with eyes closed. But the dream, you find yourself maybe in Brazil watching the football match that is going on. But you are maybe thousands of miles away from there. So there, your mind is projecting all these experiences. And also in deep sleep, in dreamless sleep, we don't see anything. But when we wake up, we experience that we had a good sleep, good experience, relaxation, rest. So Vedanta says there is change with regard to external experience. But the same person is witness, the eternal subject, in all these three states. It's very simple. You have walked in the street during daytime. When you dream, this experience comes to the surface. So in fact, every dream is a re-experience, a rehearsal of what you have experienced in waking state. And in deep sleep, we don't experience anything. But we get the feeling that we have had good relaxation, good rest when we wake up. So the point is, there is one eternal witness, one unchanging experiencer. Experiences change, but the experiencer doesn't change. The seer remains changeless. The seen experiences, seen objects change. Vedanta says, this experiencer is our own true self, Atman. And this experiencer is beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, beyond the external objects. It is only witness of all these things. Everything else is changing, therefore only relative. A very scientific, very rational statement. In fact, Vedanta philosophy is perhaps the only philosophy which can face the challenges of modern psychology and also modern science. Because Vedanta ultimately tells us who we are, who I am. If I am the body, well, we are born, we live, and maybe after 90 years, everything is over, a piece of stone in the cemetery. That's all we are. It's a terrible, miserable existence. Vedanta says only body dies. There is something which is deathless. When body perishes, an imperishable reality continues to exist. That's where we are not. That is Atman. So we are not really this body. We are not even this mind. So mind also changes. We become happy and unhappy. That means mind is changing, fluctuating. Intellect. When we read a good book, you become happy. That intellectual activity gives you pleasure. When you read a bad book, its opposite happens. So intellect also changes. So Vedanta says, behind these external objects, universe, behind these senses and mind and intellect, there is one absolute reality which remains unchanging. What was the method which was used in ancient times to teach this subject? I can just give one episode from Taittiriya Upanishad. Technically it is called Varuni Vidya. The teacher, his name was Varuna, he was a sage, and the student was Bhrigu, the disciple, his own son. So one day, this boy went to his father and asked him, please teach me the essence of Vedanta. Adhihi bhagavo brahmeti. This question he asked. Please teach me the essence of Vedanta. What is the absolute reality behind this relative universe? That was the question. And the father did not give a long lecture as we are doing now. What the father did was, you go there and meditate. But before that, you should do one important thing. Go and observe all these external empirical objects. Annam pranam chakshu srotram mano vachamiti etova imani bhudani jayante yena jatani jivanti yet prayandhi abhisam vishanti. So the instruction given by father. Now look here. You go about and see, observe these objects and see from where they emerge, from what is the source of all these empirical objects? Trees, mountains, rivers, valleys, oceans, everything. who sustains, who protects, who preserves them, and what happens to them in future. Into what do they get dissolved? I would tell you, in ancient times, during the Upanishadic period, there were no temples in India. There was no image worship. These great spiritual truths were taught in the forest hermitages. The saints and sages and teachers used to ask their disciples to go and meditate, to observe the external nature, and through the process of meditation, discover the truth for themselves. In fact, that is the essence of Swami Vivekananda's definition of Vedanta. In the paper on Hinduism, Swamiji says, by Vedas, no books are meant. They are the accumulated treasure of spiritual laws discovered by sages and saints in the past. Swamiji says on paper on Hinduism. Vedanta is defined by Swamiji in a classic, forceful language. Swamiji says, Vedanta doesn't mean books. Vedanta means an eternal spiritual law discovered by saints and sages in the past, and which could be discovered by any of us if we make the effort. So this boy went and observed trees and mountains and valleys, animals, and then he sat and started meditating. It's an illustration of how these Vedantic truths were taught and discovered and experienced by the ancient sages. And at the first stage, he thought, well, as anybody will think, a small boy studying the primary classes may imagine this, a chocolate is the ultimate thing, a child may think. So this boy thought, Annam Brahme Divyajana, Anna means matter. Those who are primitive, intellectually childish, will think that whatever we experience and enjoy with the mind and senses, that's the only thing that exists, nothing beyond. They cannot look beyond the present, beyond the empirical, beyond the visible, beyond the tangible. So this boy also thought, well, this matter, what I see in front of me, what I enjoy, that's only reality. But the father said, no, that's not true. You continue your meditation. At the next stage, he thought pranam brahme divyajanat. Prana deva imani bhutani jayande praneva jivandi pranam prayende avisam visandi tadivijnasassu, etc. So he thought vital energy is the source of creation. Vital energy is the absolute truth behind the universe. That was a second discovery, which father said was wrong. You continue your meditation. The third stage, the boy thought mind. That also is wrong, because mind also fluctuates. Anything that fluctuates, mind becomes happy, unhappy, depressed, maybe jubilant. So mind cannot be the eternal reality. At the fourth stage, the boy thought intellect. Intellect also cannot be the absolute reality, because intellect also undergoes changes, it moves. Finally, the boy realized, well, Atman is the absolute reality, and when you realize that truth, it comes to you in the form of blissfulness, ananda. So, Vedanta says, one important sign of a spiritual person who experiences this Vedantic truth, that he will have a feeling that he has reached something beyond which there is nothing to be reached, nothing to be attained. A sense of complete contentment is the essence of this spiritual experience. Shankaracharya, in one of his minor books, Viveka makes a statement that anybody who has got any of these three qualifications can discover this truth for himself. He says, Manishuttum, Mumukshuttum, Mahapurusha Samseka. First, the status of being born as a human being. Human being has got something unique about him or her. Only a human being can decide for himself or herself. You may have seen, you may remember very famous imagery in Vivekananda's complete works. He speaks about the quest, natural hunger to exert our freedom. our survival instinct. Swamiji speaks about a huge locomotive moving in the railway track. It is very big, very fast, and very strong. And from the opposite direction, a small insect is moving. Now, if you take a materialistic view, the locomotive is much stronger and forceful than the insect. But the insect has got a unique gift. It can crawl out of the track and save its life if it wants. But the locomotive doesn't have that freedom. It has to borrow its intelligence from the driver. The driver should apply the brake, then only the huge engine can come to a halt. But the insect can decide for itself. Similarly, human being alone can have a natural hunger for freedom, spiritual freedom. Non-human beings may look for freedom at the sensory level. When an animal is hungry, it looks for food. When it's raining, it may look for shelter. But human beings can give up all these and look and strive for a higher freedom. So the status of being born as a human being is the first condition. The second one is a real hunger for spiritual freedom, liberation, mumukshutvam. That is not very easy. See, all people look for freedom, but many of us try to get freedom by running away from bondage. Running away from bondage will not give us freedom. So that's why people take to alcoholism, drug addiction, and things like that. They are trying to run away. They are trying for freedom, but they are knocking at the wrong doors, that's all. Because it only gives us a kind of momentary flight from slavery. So, Shankaracharya says, the real hunger for spiritual freedom is unique to human beings. And at the third stage, and that's much more important, how do we really reinforce, enrich this hunger for freedom? We need to meet some people who attain this freedom, at least to some extent. One important difference in spiritual life and material life is this. In spiritual life, we don't get full conviction, we cannot fully believe unless we see somebody who has attained something. Because you cannot see God in front of you as you see other things. So when we talk about spirituality, when we talk about liberation, when we talk about God, we are talking about things that we cannot materially verify with our eyes, with our mind directly. So we need some verification. This verification is possible only when we see some people who have endured this spiritual pilgrimage and attained some degree of spiritual freedom. So Shankaracharya says, association with holy saints and sages, or association with great spiritual seekers, is very vital, very important in Vedantic life. These are the three important conditions, and along with this, we must have a strong discerning mind to understand that there is one reality behind and above all these relative entities, that is spiritual liberation alone. Now, in this condition, in this context, as I already made one important point, one very unique feature of Vedanta as a philosophy is, Vedanta is the only philosophical system that synthesizes the highest idealism and the highest pragmatism. Sometimes Vedanta is wrongly understood and interpreted as a religion I want to stress this point again and again. Vedanta is not a religion. Vedanta is a spiritual approach, a universal, spiritual, humanistic approach to life as a whole. This should be very clearly understood. In fact, if a person studies Vedanta, he can realize and appreciate the deeper spiritual truths of his own, her own religious tradition, because it helps us to go beyond the empirical, beyond the secondary details. Swami Vivekananda tries to make this point clear through a unique approach, and this is his special contribution. He classifies Vedantic life into 4 phases, 4 stages of evolution. This is a unique contribution of Swami Vivekananda. I must remind you, all these ideas are found in the Upanishads and in a way in Shankaracharya's commentaries, but the credit goes to Swami Vivekananda for expounding and bringing out all these in the language of our own times. That is a unique contribution of Vivekananda. He says, we all start with rituals. We go to temples, we go to churches, we go to synagogues, we go to different places of worship. We read books, we perform rituals, we talk to the priests. All this we do. This is necessary. But Swamiji says, this is only the beginning, the kindergarten of spiritual life. This is common in all religious traditions. Rituals, external rituals. Even in those religions where image worship is not practiced, even they have to turn in one particular direction. So that direction becomes the image what? Image doesn't mean a visible thing that you produce or manufacture and puts in front of you. Image means a corresponding conceptualized thing in our mind. So every religion has got one or other form of conceptualization or concretization. We go to churches, mosques, temples, synagogues, and so on. At this level, there cannot be any unity among different religion traditions, because all these are the results of different socio-anthropological and cultural traditions prevailing in the particular place where the prophet is born, where he lives and teaches. The second stage, there is mythology. Mythologies are more or less related to external ceremonies and rituals. They are attempts to justify and philosophize rituals and ceremonies. In mythology also, there will be variety and dissimilarities among different religious traditions and faith systems. The third stage is philosophy. At a philosophical level, you find many common factors among world religions. In every religion, there is, for example, the idea of going beyond the beyond the accepted conventional practices and the stage of mysticism. That also is found in all religions. But at the philosophical level, there may be some common ideas, principles, dogmas, and doctrines. Swamiji says all these 3 belong to lower levels. All these three belong to the lower level of spiritual evolution, Vedantic evolution. At the highest level is experience. It is experience that translates religion into spirituality. That's why Swami Vivekananda defined religion. True religion is spirituality. Religion is not a bundle of rituals, dogmas, and doctrines. It is a practice of the unity of existence in the whole creation. So, at the highest level, there is experience. So, that also you find all religious traditions. The difference is, in Vedantic tradition, there is a proper reconciliation, an attempt to reconcile the conflicts between theology, philosophy and mysticism. In Vedantic tradition you find, though a great spiritual teacher comes, he may have to face some problems, but he was never persecuted, because mystical experience was never considered to be contrary to philosophical and theological principles in Vedanta, unlike in other religious traditions. We can imagine the number of great mystics, saints and sages who had to face a lot of persecution and problems in many other non-Vedantic traditions. But in Vedanta, there is a harmonious synthesis, reconciliation of rituals, theology, philosophy and experience, because experience is the ultimate goal of spiritual life, not faith or belief. That way Shankaracharya says, Srutya, Yuktya, Swanubhutya. Means first we must read the books, we must read the scriptures, then we must use our intellect and reasoning, and then we must bring them all to our life experience. Experience is the ultimate goal of spiritual life. In fact, this is the unique gift of Vedanta. All religious traditions have produced great men and women of experience, no doubt about it. But in Vedanta you find this higher experience, which goes beyond rituals, sometimes goes contrary to rituals, was recognized as a part of mainstream Vedantic tradition. That's why Swami Vivekananda says, is quoted earlier in some of his speeches. Swamiji says, I will go to mosque and pray with the Muslims, I will go to church and pray with the Christians, I will go to synagogue, pray with the Jews. As I go to temples, I go to forest and meditate like Vedantins, Swamiji says. So, a true Vedantin will be able to find out the deeper, universal, eternal spiritual truths of his own or her own independent religious traditions. It gives us a deeper insight into our own faith, whatever may be that faith. Even an agnostic will be able to understand the spiritual dimension of religion, because there are many agnostics who are great humanists. As I said earlier, true humanists can be Vedantin. You know, the greatest Vedantin, one of the greatest Vedantins in the world was a person who did not affirm a creator God, Buddha. Buddha did not believe in a creator God. Buddha did not deny the existence of God, but he refused to accept or openly admit the existence of a creator God. And Buddha is considered to be one of the greatest Vedantins, according to Swami Vivekananda himself. What Buddha did was, he gave a humanized, a pragmatic interpretation of the great metaphysical truths of Upanishads. If Shankaracharya gave a spiritual and metaphysical interpretation, Buddha gave a humanistic, pragmatic interpretation. Swami Vivekananda, coming in 19th century, gave us a universal interpretation, universalistic, globalistic interpretation of Vedanta. Swamiji brought out these Vedantic truths. In so way, I want to bring it out of the woods and forest, from the hermitages of the saints and sages, and I want to make it the common property of the whole humanity. Because Vedanta helps us to become better human beings at the practical level, at the same time accept and experience the deeper spiritual truths in all religious traditions. In a way, Swami Vivekananda thought Vedanta is the right spiritual tradition for our own times. So I have already taken the allotted time. I should thank Swami Chedaranji Maharaj for giving this opportunity, for giving this talk on what is Vedanta. Thank you. Namaskar.